One artist, 100 lifetimes. From circus acrobats to shattered war victims, from solemn self-portraits to sculptures made of scrap metal, Picasso's art didn't just reflect the world. It challenged it, broke it apart, and reassembled it in new, daring forms. This is the story of 12 works that captured a mind in constant motion. He never stuck to one style, never waited for anyone to catch up. Over 70 years, Pablo Picasso broke every rule he could find, and made up new ones along the way. From portraits grounded in tradition to chaotic scenes of war and anguish, his art mirrored his feverish artistic mind. What follows are 12 works that trace Picasso's relentless transformation and defiance of convention. Picasso was just 18, still carrying the weight of the old masters and classical art training on his shoulders. But in this early self-portrait, the young artist was already pushing far past imitation. You can see the raw skill, the post-impressionist lines, the shadowed cheekbones, the confidence. This wasn't just a student sketching his reflection, it was a young man testing the limits of realism, already drifting towards something brand new. That mastery so early in his life became both his foundation and his burden. At the time, Picasso was only 1 year away from leaving Spain and making his move to Paris, a decision that would change his life and his art. Over the years, Picasso would return to self-portraits. They weren't just studies of appearance, they were landmarks, each one capturing a moment of change, a new way of seeing himself and the world. Dark blues, pale skin, figures frozen in grief. The life emerged after a tragedy that haunted Picasso. His friend Carles Casagemas had taken his own life in a Parisian cafe. The suicide tore through Picasso. He plunged into what became known as his blue period, defined by sorrow, poverty, and quiet despair. In the life, the man, nearly nude, held by a woman, represents Casagemas. But here's the twist. An X-ray revealed the figure was originally Picasso himself, a self-portrait repainted into a tribute, or perhaps a confession. It's as if he couldn't bear to face his own sorrow head-on. That period of mourning tinted his colors and shaped his perspective on the world. Blue and green cool tones filled his work with figures that looked outcast, weighed down by silence. Their suffering became a language of its own, but sorrow would eventually give way to something warmer. The colors eventually grew warmer, and the melancholy soon softened into something brighter. During what became his rose period, Picasso turned to circus performers and acrobats. He saw their fragility, their strength, and the constant balancing act their craft made them endure. In Acrobat on a Ball, the figures teeter with intention, both visually and emotionally. They move through space with grace and risk, like Picasso through his art. Always vulnerable, always performing, and always on the verge of failure or success. Around this time, Picasso resided in a rundown building in Paris that was home to artists, poets, and wanderers, including Modigliani and Braque. It was practically a ruin, but it was also a sanctuary. The acrobats in his paintings weren't just passive models, they reflected Picasso's own struggle to stay upright in a world of shifting ground. He often painted them not in motion, but in stillness, as if freezing the strain behind their poise. Over 90 portrait sittings, and still no breakthrough. Gertrude Stein, the American writer and patron, sat patiently as Picasso struggled to paint her face. Frustrated, the artist wiped the canvas clean and left town. When he returned, he no longer painted Stein as she looked, but as she felt. Solid, composed, and enduring. The resulting portrait didn't flatter, but it resonated. In painting Stein, Picasso moved from surface to substance. The work marked a quiet break from traditional portraiture and a step toward the psychological. It was a turning point where the subject became more than flesh and features. Here, Stein embodied a presence. When others questioned the result, Stein herself stood by it. "It is I," she said. "It is the only reproduction of me, which is always I." That portrait indeed marked a shift, and soon Picasso turned the brush back on himself. Now 25 years old, Picasso returned to his own face. But the lines, of course, had changed. bolder, flatter, and influenced by African masks and Romanesque forms. Picasso was abandoning Western realism and idealism, moving toward abstraction and symbolism. He found new truths in much older faces. Carved masks, sacred idols, these didn't flatter, they didn't explain. They revealed something ancient and unspoken. Picasso's eyes here are wider, his jaw sharper. It wasn't cubism yet, but it was closing in. This was no longer about looking in the mirror. It was about inventing one. He was stepping away from what was seen and toward what was sensed. 5 women, angular limbs, faces like masks. When Picasso unveiled Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, even his friends recoiled. The women, who are sex workers, confront the viewer without any warmth or apology. And they weren't posing. They were daring the viewer to look back. Some say that the painting grew from Picasso's illness, a venereal disease he caught in a brothel. The pain and the shame, it's all right there. And so is Picasso's fixation on African art, approached not just as a curiosity, but as a confrontation. Even his fellow avant-garde artists were stunned by the image. Some called it monstrous, a few others genius. For Picasso, this painting didn't just evolve, it erupted. And with it, the old rules finally crumbled to dust. Picasso needed a new system, and so Cubism began to take shape. The deeper we go, the stranger and more brilliant Picasso's world becomes. If this kind of storytelling speaks to you, subscribing to The Collector is the simplest way to keep exploring. Cubism didn't appear overnight. It took shape through study, discipline, and disassembly. Jolie, titled after a song and a nickname for Picasso's partner Eva Guel, is a portrait in code. Browns and grays dominate. The subject nearly vanishes into lines, planes, and fractured geometry. It's not a portrait, it's a visual puzzle. Emotion gave way to almost total abstraction, yet somehow a quiet melody remained, buried beneath all the angles. But look closely and there's still rhythm there. The quiet strum of Eva's guitar echoes in the shapes. To some, it looked like nothing more than visual noise, but to Picasso, it was harmony, a new language where sound, sight, and structure collapsed into one. As the world edged toward peace after World War I, Picasso's work changed yet again. The sharp angles softened, the chaos settled. In its place came stillness, and a portrait unlike anything before it. For now, Picasso stepped away from abstraction and painted Olga, his fiancée, with rare elegance and calm. Refined and composed, her posture masks the silence around her. Most of the canvas is bare, and the quiet space says more than the figure itself. Even in the stillness, something stirs, a tension waiting to surface. The painting quietly pits Picasso's experimental urges against Olga's upper-class refinement. Their marriage would last 17 years, but it was strained by infidelity and distance. The portrait captures the calm before the fracture. That fracture would echo far beyond Picasso's home, into history. Smoke, screams, chaos. Guernica was Picasso's response to atrocity. Painted after the bombing of the town by German forces during Spain's Civil War, the painting became a banner of grief. Grayscale like newsprint, figures howling, twisted in pain, a horse, a child, a broken sword. Every figure, every scream, flattened into black and white, as if color itself had fled the scene in fear. Dora Maar, Picasso's partner and a photographer, documented the creation of Guernica. Her influence helped shape the piece, from its planning to its final brutal form. Her photographs now serve as a visual diary of the painting's evolution, a record of how grief took shape in charcoal and canvas. Dora Maar recorded Picasso's work, but she also became it. The weeping woman turns Maar's anguish into sharp angles and searing color. But this was no tribute. Picasso never left his former lover, Marie-Therese, and pitted both women against each other. Maar's heartbreak became a subject, a symbol. She despised the painting and what it represented. The muse became material, the woman was reduced to abstraction. For Dora, the painting felt like theft. Picasso captured her image and her anguish, dissecting it. Over time, Maar's confidence unraveled, her art faded. Her pain became immortal, but at a cost she never asked to pay. In the years that followed, Picasso yet again turned inward, finding inspiration in the everyday. A bicycle seat, 2 handlebars. That's all, and yet, there it is, a bull's head, unmistakable. Here, Picasso turned scraps into symbols. There was no planning, it came to him in a flash, instinctual. A friend once asked how he made it, and Picasso said it simply appeared. Bulls frequently haunted his work, icons of Spain, of masculinity, of the mythical minotaur. Here, the bull is reborn from junk, brutal, elegant, and brilliant. A reminder that even the discarded could become divine. Near the end of his life, Picasso drew inspiration from Rembrandt. Ecce Homo, originally a biblical moment, was stripped of its sanctity. Picasso turned the scene into a stage. The crowd isn't faceless, they're his lovers, rivals, and ghosts. Watching, reacting. The final act of a man who had played every role: creator, destroyer, lover, and monster. The canvas came off like a confession, a chaotic, theatrical farewell staged not before saints, but before those who shaped his life, many of whom he had loved and many he had hurt. At 91 years old, Picasso wasn't painting Jesus Christ. He was painting himself, center stage, exposed, and this was his final bow. Picasso didn't just change art, he dismantled it, piece by piece, style by style. From solemn blue portraits to angular revolutions, from mythic beasts to bicycle parts, each work revealed a new facet of a man who never settled. These 12 works aren't simply famous, they're fragments of a restless force captured in motion. Picasso was never just one artist. He was a gallery of selves, each one undone by the next.